Hey gamers, GamingWithMelkor here, bringing you another challenge video. I've just completed a Kings Cup challenge. I just want to show you how I actually did in my very first Kings Cup challenge. So guys, as you can see in our first challenge, we actually had 9 wins, which for our first time I think is quite good. So let's just have a look at how we actually did. And unfortunately I have recorded some battles here with a different deck since then. But these are obviously how we did. Obviously that was our final defeat there, unfortunately. Probably losing with the worst deck on there. Now obviously we had a good 2-1 victory, a 1-0 victory, a 3-1 victory. We had a defeat there, I'm afraid. We had a 3-1 victory, a 2-0 defeat, a 3-1 victory, 3-0 victory, 3-1 victory, and a 2-1 victory, with some interesting decks. So guys, let's have a look at how we did this. So we're just going to actually have a look through a few of these. So let's have a look at my very first Kings Cup battle. So remember with something like this as well, you actually get to use cards that you may have never used before. So for me that was actually quite interesting, using different decks that you've never utilised before either. So this is the deck that we was going to use, or we had to use, so let's look at how we had got our 2-1 victory. So as I'm not quite sure how to play this deck, I'm going to drop down the Princess in the back. Now we do have obviously our Expo now, while we wait for our opponent to see what he's going to do. So we're going to drop down the Dark Knight, so I'm now going to drop down my Ice Spirit, followed by the Expo, and then we're going to drop down the guards. So at this point we're actually looking quite good, we're getting some hits on the tower. Our opponent then obviously decides to drop down that Mega Minion and those cards. That's Horde as well. So we're going to drop down this Princess in the back to start dealing damage, but we are able to take that first tower down to just over 1000 HP. So at this point guys, we do have a very slight lead, but our opponent is catching up very quick from his push and actually takes a very minor lead at this point. So we're now going to drop down our Expo again. Our opponent does lightning that, so he does take out both that Princess and does significant damage to that Expo as well. Well placed cards there is going to allow us that Expo to actually take down that first tower, giving us a very marginal 1-0 lead at this point. Now I haven't really utilised the bowler at this point, so I'm just going to wait to build my elixir up before we actually utilise it as well. And I've never really used, obviously, the mini P.E.K.K.A either at this point. So our opponent does obviously drop that Inferno down in the back, to obviously utilise those 5 spirits against us. But we do now have, obviously, that bowler. We're going to back that up with the Princess, which we're going to drop down here. And then we're going to utilise the Zap spell on this left-hand side. We are going to lose this tower though, I'm afraid, but that's just one of those things. I'm now going to drop down the Expo behind that bowler. Our opponent then does have the Mega Minion, unfortunately, and we have nothing really to counter that. So that Expo is going to start to deal damage to that tower, just getting it down to 1988. That Mega Minion is going to go down before he's able to do any damage to us. And then we decide to drop down the guards as well. So as you can see, our opponent then drops down another one of those buildings. So we now have our, obviously, Princess and Bowler. Unfortunately, a well-placed lightning spell takes out both of those. And we do put down that Expo, which is just absolutely wasted there. Down go the guards to obviously try and stop these troops here. But at this point, guys, we are looking quite precarious. So in goes that bowler to try and take out those troops, which he does very, very well. At this point, we are slightly behind, but that's just one of those things. So in goes the bowler, supported by that ice wizard, that Princess. Down goes the Expo here, and then we drop down the mini P.E.K.K.A for the very first time. Our Expo is able to finally lock onto that tower, so now we have the bowler, the mini P.E.K.K.A, the Expo all going in for that tower for a 2-1 victory. A very interesting deck, a very fun game as well. Obviously playing cards that you've never really played before. Obviously I've never really played the bowler before. Obviously I haven't had the Princess that long, and I haven't used an Expo in a very, very long time. Obviously our opponent had his Furnace, his Lumberjack, which he rarely got to use, etc. But he did utilise that lightning spell very well. So let's have a look at how I was able to get a 3-1 victory against the Minor 3 Musketeer deck, while we had our Golem deck as well. So let's just watch this. Now luckily for me, I obviously have used a very similar Golem deck to this in the past, having a couple of Golem decks on my channel. But obviously it's not a card I've used for quite a while. So as my elixir builds up, I'm just going to wait and then drop that golem in the back to start our push, while our opponent decides what he's going to do. He then decides to drop down the dragon, followed by the miner, which he then mirrors. Oh my god. So I drop down, obviously, my musketeer to try and alleviate some of that damage on that tower. And then I'm going to drop down the fire spirits on this left hand side. Oh, I then actually change my mind and decide to go with the minion horde. So we have the golem going in on that tower. Our opponent does utilise that sap, but unfortunately for our opponent, we are able to obviously keep 2 free. So our golem is going in for that tower, and he's doing some significant damage, which he's going to take down. At this point, guys, this gives us a 1-0 lead here. Our opponent obviously is looking to level that up, sending down knight down this right side, which he does, leveling it up at 1 apiece. So at this point, our opponent has then mirrored his knight down the opposite side as well, hence it being level 10. So we're going to decide to push our golem down this right hand side again. So at this point it's just a waiting game to let that elixir build up, so we can do a little push behind that golem. As you can see, I've not actually utilised that elixir collector. So I drop down my musketeer, not realising my opponent had the 3 musketeers, so I am going to fireball those now. Unfortunately, it's not just enough damage to actually take them down, but our musketeer will succeed in taking those down. So now we have the musketeer taking out that baby dragon, and we have that golem backed up by that musketeer starting to work on that second tower. At this point, we now get that tower down to 327 HP, putting us in a very strong position. So we're going to let that elixir build up before we then decide what to do. We then decide to drop down the archers on the opposite side. Our opponent then drops down the prince again with double lumberjack. So I'm going to drop down my minions here to support on defense, while that golem and archers take out that second tower. At this point though, guys, we are looking very, very strong. We have the golem, the musketeer, 2 archers, and those few minions going in for that tower. Our opponent decides to try and counter to go for our crown tower, but unfortunately he's not going to succeed, and we get a very solid 3-1 victory. So guys, that's obviously how we performed in our very first Kings Cup challenge. Now it only costs 5 gems to enter the Kings Cup challenge, and we have 1 day, 21 hours left, and it's quite fun to actually utilise different decks that you wouldn't normally get to use, which makes it so interesting. So guys, I may well do a video on Kings Cup challenge, me just obviously playing through it and seeing how I do with live battles. You'll have to keep an eye out and see if that comes up. So guys, that's it from me. If you like what you see, comment below, let me know. If you've not subscribed, do me a massive favour guys and smash that subscribe button, and I'll see you gamers next time. Take